Hey guys, today I wanted to show you an editing tutorial for another landscape that just shows the range of editing capabilities that's not so much within my personal style, but just options that you have in Lightroom. Of course, you can always use presets and try those, but I really like to understand the components of the editing tools that Lightroom offers. So we're going to stick with that for now. First thing, no matter what your style is, you want to straighten your horizon. And it helps to have some semblance of your white balance locked in. Like, this is pretty cool and dark, but that's okay for right now. What we want to do is just kind of see what the possibilities are and how we can kind of color change some things. So you do, of course, before you do anything else, you want to go through some of your basic editing preferences, and for the sake of this, we'll just hit auto, and it's nicely overexposed as Lightroom does. I'll drop that down a little bit, and I love the mood going on there. Bring up my clarity. We'll come back to tone curve and more color options. Before anything else, let's adjust our lens corrections. And there we have it. Let's start down here with calibration and kind of adjust the lens version of the colors from what we, or not the lens version, the camera version, the calibration of the colors. Here you have different versions you can go through. I don't find it necessary to adjust those, but you're welcome to kind of play around. And if I want this photo to be a bit warmer, a little less green, come through here and adjust it a bit. My reds can be more orange for warmth and less red toned. Desaturate a little bit. My greens, let's make them a little more blue, a bit desaturated. Make the blues a little more turquoise colored, and desaturate. And just some fun options. This isn't something I would normally do, but I like to play around and see what available opportunities there are for editing, for exploring your style, and for seeing what we have. The tone curve is a very powerful tool, and that is to actually adjust your histogram, which you see up here, where you have the shadows and darks on your left, and the whites, exposure, how bright the photo is, on your right. You will see there's significantly more bright tones, but almost an equal amount of darker tones as well, and that's obvious because of the fog coverage here, and then we have a lot of dark elements in the trees that we see. So you can adjust this through here, obviously, and then you can watch your tone curve. When it's straight across and completely flat, then it's set to all information is at 0. Your points are all at 0. But as you adjust them, you can see how the tone curve changes. And that's honestly your typical S-curve that you want to start with to kind of get an understanding of how things are changed. Obviously, this is really dramatic, but once you have the S-curve dialed in, then you can make further changes that suit your style. So this is one way of adjusting it. Click on this box here, and then we can go in and further manually adjust the tone curve. And just for a starting point, let's just get that S-curve going in here. And that kind of lends to a kind of a funky, interesting film vibe. Not bad. But then this is on the RGB channel. What we can then do is go into reds and see what red tones are being affected and how it changes as we make these adjustments. We'll see there's darker red tones, or more red tones in the darks, as you can see through here, little bitty details, and then a little less in the bright colors, the white parts of the photo, obviously, as you can see. So why don't we pull these up, pull that down, you can see there, more reds in the shadows, less in the brights. We want to reverse it, a little better. So again, kind of going on the S-curve pattern. So that's red. And usually when you start adjusting them, it can look wildly off. It takes some getting used to. But then you're going to go down and select the green channel. And then you want to, again, adjust the S-curve. Might be wildly off. Maybe you want to do it the opposite. But it tends to lend for inverted looking colors, as you see, because now you're also affecting the reds that you just adjusted that was in the fog. So it's really neat and interesting how you can change the look of your photo just by adjusting the colors. And it's a really powerful, really helpful tool. You just gotta play with it. Here in the blue channel, same thing, go in S-curve. You can invert it. and then see it kind of lends to the more funky styles. I think Lightroom, if it doesn't now, at least one of the original presets that I used to play with had a look just like this. In fact, I think even Instagram had one of these filters. So it's just kind of fun to see what your options are and how it changes your photo. This, of course, is a little bit more natural, even though it still looks a little wild. And then you can see here the adjustments you made locally on the sliders, and you can kind of readjust that to look better. That doesn't look terrible. It's still a little contrasty for my taste, but not too bad. We can go down to the Hsl Color Panel. I keep mine on all, so you can just see everything at a glance, but you can also go over to color and then adjust them locally so that you can make even more specific color changes. And if you're really honed in on what colors you like and how you want to change it, this can lend to another huge drastic change in your colors. So we can see here there's some blues, there's a lot of green, there's going to be some yellow, there's a little bit of orange. So if we want to just focus on those colors, we can just go right in and start making those localized adjustments, and you can see, look how much yellow is actually in that photo. A lot more than you'd probably realize at first. And then you can just kind of go through and adjust all the color and tones and hues and the luminance and saturation, how bright, how intense a color is. This is how bright or how dark that color is. You can't see it so much on red. Here on yellow, really bright, really dark. In the middle, saturation, really yellow, not so yellow. And you know, if you first looked at this, you might not think, man, there's a lot of yellow in that photo, but adjust these sliders and you can really see specifically how much that color is present in your photo. Let's go check out the blues. No blue, lots of blue. I actually like the blue kind of showing up in there. Looks really pretty interesting. Give it a watercolor effect, a darker blue effect. Just really interesting how you can really adjust these. So all things to consider. Then you have split toning, further color variations, and this is going to adjust your highlights and shadows specifically. So this is where I almost always start. This is kind of the basic panel setup I have. You can also select this box here for highlights and say I want to keep it a little warmer. Highlights I tend to keep warm because if I'm shooting with natural light, it's going to offer a warmer tone, or if I want to bring that out if the photo's too cool. Shadows you can tend to get away with leaving a little cooler if you wanted them to be really cool. Here's your extremes. Wouldn't want to do it too much unless you're really trying to color correct. We're going to kind of keep it warmer, yellow, green. You have the whole color gradient chart here to play with. You can also select these just to kind of get started. These 5 colors here, you can see what's available to you. Some of the blues out of there. Go down to details, check all your other options here. And then we can go back and kind of change things. If we're like, oh, I'm not really loving this, I want some more greens, you can always go back to your calibration. Or just kind of start back at the top and work your way down, which I often find to be the easiest, is just I'll work my way through the panel a couple times to see exactly what it is I'm looking to adjust. So say I want a little more green because it is all foresty. Here we go, the RGB. And say I want to kind of take out some of that matted film look. I'm just going to pull this down because this is on your dark side. This is kind of bringing up the darks, enhancing the darks. I do like it a little bit, just to soften. Nothing too crazy. Bring this down a touch. Another fun option when you're working with fog, this is obviously not going to work for every photo, but for some with fog or light or just specific scenes that you have, is to select the 1.8 over here on the zoom tool. Select this adjustment brush and go as large as you can. So we're essentially, the whole photo is within a circle. And then select the area you want to change. At this point we could select the fog. And if I press 0 on my keyboard, it highlights in red everything that's now being specifically adjusted. Press O again so you can see your changes. And just based on the burn highlights right here, you can see how that has now changed the fog. That looks really kind of cool. But I can make more localized adjustments if I want. And where the dehaze tool comes in handy specifically for fog in this instance, you can really bring out intensity of the fog or enhance it, or I guess reduce the intensity of the fog and then enhance the intensity of the fog. It's kind of a fun tool to mess with. It's one where you want to be a little careful, because even though this kind of gives it a cool stormy effect, and I could absolutely use this and really like it, I know that it wasn't stormy that day, so I kind of have some issues like allowing that to actually stay that way. But I do like some of the intensity. In exchange, I'm going to take out some of the exposure adjustments that happen because I am on burn highlights. If you click here, you can make all sorts of adjustments, or I honestly just leave it on one setting and then just adjust whatever I want here, because it'll do whatever you tell it to. So I think this actually looks kind of cool. And adjust my texture a little bit, further enhance the detail. Just keeping the changes kind of subtle, but again, however you like it to look. Like if I wanted to fully make the fog look kind of blurry, I could do that, although probably not my favorite option personally. Clarity would be the tool you're after. That looks a little more natural, but not too bad. And we'll close that out. And that's pretty interesting. I still don't love the greens looking quite so blue. So if that's something I wanted to go adjust here, I can change here in the Hsl Color Panel and make the greens look however I want them. So a lot of really neat options, a lot of a lot of specific adjustments, a lot of variety to play with. Really just kind of see what the capabilities are in Lightroom. Let's try one more photo. Here we are on a mountaintop, and I think this was a quick edit I had done just to kind of see where I was at. This is what I started with. We'll go down and fix the lens corrections. And just for the sake of this, we'll just hit auto and see what Lightroom says. That's not too bad. These are just my normal kind of changes. And again, even if you do really specific adjustments in your tone curve or in the colors, you still want to kind of have your basic foundations down. You want your horizons to be straight, like I said. You want your exposure to be roughly where you think it looks best, and just other little changes that you think make the photo better. Another thing I wouldn't mind doing is kind of brightening up this subject here. So kind of keep it a little bit small. I want to keep it kind of subtle. This is obviously too bright, but I can at least see what I'm doing here. And then just pull it back down so he's not quite so intense. But that's a little better. He stands out. And even where I wasn't very specific around him, it's not too much that I need to go through and finally paint on around him. So let's go down to the tone curve again, and we're just on the regular RGB panel. And like that gives some really good intensity and contrast and color. So you can kind of see if you really like the contrast and color. It's almost better to get it here as you're adjusting these particular parts of the photo instead of just changing your exposure here changes the exposure for every piece of the photo, everything in the photo. Adjusting the contrast changes the contrast in everything, not just in the specific parts of the photo. Like here again, we're looking at the color channels, we're in all the color channels, and we're adjusting the light side of the photo and the dark side of the photo, not everything. And that tends to lead to more intention and more understanding of how the information can be manipulated through editing, which is the whole idea. Like I said, it does take some time to really learn how to adjust all of these to your liking. But it's worth it as you go in developing your own style and work through, how you want things to look. So here is a good example of typical S-curve in the reds. Looks kind of intense, but what you can then do is go into greens. And changing the greens is going to change how the red is affected, because those colors are going to balance each other out essentially. So I really love how that works, and it can be a little overwhelming, but it's so useful. See, by reducing the greens here in the darks, you're seeing the red is showing up more. By bringing it up, you're kind of pushing out all the reds and you're just showing the greens. See, that almost neutralizes it in the clouds. And then we're going to go down to blue. Let's try an S-curve. See how that looks. And then you see, so you get some of that warmth back in the shadows on the skin. A little intense, but kind of a fun option to consider. You can make further specific adjustments with your darks and your lights here. Go back down. Obviously this is not a great edit on this photo, but I really just want you guys to see the range of your options here. Say, you know, I kind of like the tones of everything, and so but I want to fix some of the red, like the ground looks too red, so let's desaturate some of those reds. Let's make them a little more orange. They kind of blend a little bit. You can make it pop. Now let's go to the oranges, make them a little less red. Not too much, because we also want to keep his skin tone in mind. Desaturate a bit. That's too much if you look at his skin. Yellows. Yellow is a huge color here. Check that out. A little less green, a little more orange, or maybe a little more green. Bring up the luminance. Here's the greens. Desaturate a little. Let's adjust the blues. It's another big one. Make the mountains look really green and teal, really blue and purple. Kind of fun to see the adjustments you can change. All right, let's go down to split toning. Oops. There we are. And then you can change the balance of how that looks. I want the shadows to be a little less orangey yellow, so maybe this is the time we can take shadows over here, reduce the saturation, split toning can be over here. That looks kind of interesting. Here we could also adjust the color gradient. Say I want it to be a little more in this direction. That looks kind of neat. You can kind of see just how it changes the whole look of the photo. It's really, really, really incredible. All right, so I mean, this is one way to edit this photo. It's not terrible. And here's one more photo. This was the end result of what I edited. We'll reset. Go down, changing, select lens corrections. Go back up. Auto adjust. Checking your tone curves. Let's just stick with the RGB panel for this one. Get your S-curve in there. And when it's a photo specific to this one, you're not worried about skin tones as much or the way the trees look. It tends to be a little bit easier. So if you're just starting, this might be a better option for you. And just to kind of get a feel for what it is. Then as you develop, you know, how you like the tone curve to look or what adjustments you like to make, then it'll be easier to go in more specific directions. So let's select the Hsl. We'll look at all the panel here. So say I can automatically tell, and you can actually select this tool and see, click this. This looks kind of a yellow-green, and it will tell you exactly over here exactly what colors are adjusted, yellow and green. And then I can make further adjustments in the photo of those specific colors that are brought out. So just reduce the yellows and greens a little bit. Same for hue. You can select this, and we'll go to, go to the reds. Come on, select it. There we go. And then you can see the two colors and kind of the direction of how those hues are. And if you want to change them, then you can. Say I wanted them all to be kind of orange and matching. That would be a much better adjustment right there on the hues. Make the oranges a little more yellow, a little more orange, make them all kind of red looking. And same for luminance. Sorry. Here we are. And you see again, yellow greens here, desaturate it a bit, desaturate them more, and it does affect the same colors all over the photo. So just some fun examples of how you can really use the tone curve and split toning and the other color information to change the look of your photo, enhance it, or just simply edit from those points. And I recommend that you certainly try that so that you can get a better understanding of the information in your photo. This is certainly something that I'm always learning. In adjustments, I'm always fine-tuning, so don't feel like you need to go out and perfect it right now or make it anything perfect. It's a learning curve. Sometimes you can get too frustrated and you just want to stop and you just need to take a break and do the simple adjustments, and that's totally fine. You don't have to perfect, like I said, you don't have to perfect it. You can just maybe you find an adjustment where you can make it kind of matted or film and you're like, wow, that's amazing, and you want to use that more often. Let that be a signature in your editing of as you go along. You want to add a little bit of that matte look through the RGB channel right here, and all of your photos, well, that's an easy shift. You can just put that in everything. And you know how to do that manually. You don't need a preset to do it. But if you don't want that, then just take it all the way out, right? You want to understand how the S-curve works. You want more light. Bring in some more light. Or enhance the light that you have, or less. And that's something I love to do. In fact, I do that in all of my photos. If I'll just stick it on this panel right here, and I'll just adjust this lights option to bring that out, because it gives a nice little pop. And it gives some clarity, because now you're having the lights compete with the darks a little bit, and that's just a natural form of contrast. So I hope you found that helpful, and I will see you in